something, maybe not necessarily to my syllabus, but I think I may add like an iCal or ICS
Yeah, that's, yeah.
to students. So like if I put all of these dates on my syllabus, I can put this in my iCal and send it to all my students. And that'll be on their smartphones.
And
so
if it's synchronized, if you change it,
I can change it on my calendar,
Yeah.
and then it'll change on their calendar as well. So I'll
Yeah.
have a hard copy of it as well as an electronic. This is good.
You know, another idea would be kind of like Dr. Carney, what you were saying in terms of having the schedule moved up closer, like have what I need to know for the work in this course, you know, all that stuff like in the first 2-3 pages, and then all the statements after that, or maybe even having 2 separate, you know, packets with all of these, you know, statement stuff, the heavier reading that has that contract page attached to it that students, you know, they still have to read it and, you know, sign that they've read it. I mean, there are a few different ways that you can approach it, but I mean, certainly there are some things that are done very well in the syllabus. What about Professor Pauline Mayer? What did you think of this one?
I absolutely hated it.
You hated this one, okay.
It was difficult to read. I personally didn't like the format. There's no information regarding the professor, how to contact him if I need you.
Yeah.
It was much difficult to read. Yeah, it was busy. It's far too.
It's definitely incomplete.
Yeah.
Well, what are we missing here?
I don't have any expectations. He was, I'm sorry.
Go ahead. No, you are doing well.
Yeah, I don't see any outcomes, any expectations. What I do see is the 2 papers in the midterm that you want me to complete on this course.
Yeah. Which, you know, the amount of work that was put into the paper topics and the schedule, I mean, I think it's clear that this instructor cares deeply about the content. But you mentioned a few things are missing.
Yeah, some of them already were mentioned. The contact details, expectation, the part of the policy, you know, what will happen if, or what's going to happen if, you know, that's very important because, you know, it depends what the level of students, if undergrad or master or postgrad, those are, but generally those are adult people, you know, and they have also rights. And if something is not specific, they can't utilize that well for their paper. So, you know, that has to be specified. That's at least my point.
I would imagine Professor Meyer's been teaching for a very long time because this looks like the kind of syllabi that I got when I was in college, with a little bit more content information. And I understand why it's not acceptable now, but I also think about how, okay, well, when I was in college, when I was in college was my whole life, right? Because there was funding, and I was expected to be a full-time student. I was not expected or allowed to work to keep my funding. So college was my job, and there were no distractions. So I knew good and well how to find a professor. I could look her up in the course catalog and find out where her office was. And since she wouldn't be moved around, right? I knew how to do that. And it's a little bit of work, but we expected to do a little bit of work. And so while those stipulations do not apply in 2013, I can't help but think about, you know, what have we lost by having to essentially spoon feed grown-ups who are at the college level. I want students to succeed, and I think that they should be given all the assistance they need. And you know, being a first-generation college student, there are things one doesn't know, right? But on the other hand, college ought to be an intellectual experience, and I think it can be beneficial to remind students of where they're at, you know? You are a university student, so you should have some critical thinking skills already, which we are going to hone to a fine extent. And you should know how to find information, and we're going to make sure you pick up more of that. I just have to throw that out there, right? I mean, I would not ever suggest that Professor Meyer's syllabus would fly today. I also think, again, she also knows her students. They're pretty self-directed because, or they're well seasoned in academia, even though I think it's an undergraduate level course. Because she can say things like, you know, there's this book, you have to read it. And I'm going to suggest you start reading it on this week in September. And then you're going to read some more of it the next week in September. The implication is you need to finish that sucker before September 30th, right? So students presumably pick up on that. But again, she knows her students and knows that they're going to do that. Which also makes me wonder, you know, with both of these, we don't know like from where they're emanating, right? But it could be that this is a history class aimed especially at history majors at an elite institution, where they're going to set the bar high anyhow, and they're going to have certain expectations, and they can make demands on these students because that's appropriate, right? But anyhow, or maybe she just hates students, and that's why there's no information.
Could be any one of these reasons, yeah.
Try to find me if you can.
No, I hear what you're saying, Gabrielle. I definitely do. And you know, I mean, yeah, this is very similar to, like you, like a syllabus that I've seen a million times as a student as well. The professors, either she doesn't seem to care to, or any other reason, you know, putting in much in the way of policy statements. Maybe she's thought of it just, it's not, waste of space in my syllabus. Yeah, I think in terms of the expectations that exist today,
Decades ago.
different, yeah. Joseph?
Okay, so it has entered my mind one thing actually, which was similar to that syllabus during my experience. Actually, when I was studying, one of the professors, his syllabus was literally one page. The contact details and literally the number, the topics which will be covered, and dates for exams, or midterms and so on. But he spent literally 1 hour during the first lecture to describing everything what he wants. And every 5 minutes he said, do you understand? Is everything clear? And recently, before, once I finished with him, I mean the course and so on, I found out that after a few years, you know, when I left, he started even to record the first class when he was describing everything.
Really?
Yeah, and it was funny because at the beginning, students, they thought that it is not important, or it is, you know, they like disregard that. But actually, he described everything in detail, just verbally. His syllabus was 1 page, but everything he covered. And then very often when students forget something, or forgot or something like that, he said, probably you didn't attend the first class with me.
Probably not.
Okay, so that was a pretty cool because that already a sort of provided us with, you know, a discipline,
Yes.
and taught us to listen more carefully. That was interesting, that was an old age professor, very good professor. He had his own way of doing that. I don't know if it is good or bad, it worked to some extent.
I think with that drop period, that might be a little problematic, you know.
Yeah.
It probably it was. Probably it was. Maybe he liked that. I don't know. But it was. You know, he was doing that.
Yeah. Well, and I think if you have a one-page syllabus, someone who goes into it with that much time and care in the first class, I don't know. I mean, I don't know if you'll find many instructors who will put together a one-page syllabus, but then go through it that thoroughly. I don't know. Gerard, did you have anything to add before we?
That's a good point he brings up, because that's, and maybe all of you in here can help me with this before next semester. So I'm counting on all of you to be my consultant. You know, I'm having this battle with killing trees. That's my first issue.
Yeah.
So I do put my entire syllabus in Moodle so they can get an electronic version. They can either, like, they'll have like in the first cell or shell, it'll have the entire syllabus mapped out. I also have an attachment of the Word document of the syllabus. Okay. I'll bring the syllabus to class and go over it with students briefly. Now, my battle is, do I go over those things in nitpicky fashion that are contractual, or do I immediately go into content? Because, getting back to your point, if a student's grade drops at 3 unexcused absences, you know, is that something that I have to mention in class if it's already in the syllabus? You know,
I would, because those consequences are dire and may affect the student's financial aid. So something like that, it's so important and so unfortunate as well, that it ought to be in writing and it ought to be highlighted.
So there are
because-
certain things that need to be probably earlier in the sentence of syllabus rather than later, or does it matter where it is? Because I guess I'm looking at the quality of the content, how it affects the student, and where it should appear in the syllabus. So that's one of my issues. Another issue, I'm glad you brought that up. Another issue is the detail of the assignments in my syllabus. That's just something I'm just thinking about as well.
Well,
I'm looking at page numbers for this
Right.
and then I'm looking at something that's a little bit more explicit here.
you know, another possibility is, I mean, that you have kind of the schedule of topics, like in the longer syllabus. I mean, I guess in terms of real estate being valuable in a syllabus, you can have, I would think you could have the assignment, an assignment sheet be just a separate handout or download. Does that need to be actually in the syllabus?
Not necessarily, no. It could be in Moodle.
Right, I mean, just, you know, in the same kind of general area as where the syllabus is, maybe, in whatever makes the most sense in terms of work, you know, visual organization, but,
In the geology one also, there are 2 texts, and they're pretty straightforward, which is probably typical in a science or a math class, because you're proceeding at this level, right? You're proceeding through one
Right.
manual. In the history course, there are a number of readings, including, you know, portions of readings, and then this collection of readings that the professor produced on electronic reserves. So that may also be why she goes into such detail as to what specific parts
That makes sense.
are being read.
So I can see already I need to strike some sort of happy medium, because I think I'm like right in between these two.
That's
yeah.
probably great then.
Yeah, and that's really what it's all about. You know, like I said, I wouldn't consider either one of these syllabi to be perfect. I think one is, you know, it has some excesses, and another, I mean, clearly some deficiencies. I mean, Gabrielle, as much as I personally agree with, you know, your comment about looking up the professor and all that, you know, I love that, you know, doing that kind of legwork on my own, but, you know, I don't think a lot of people do. You know, just give me the email address.
Right.
Just give me the extension.
And
you know.
frankly, yeah,
Is it
there's
that
no
hard?
reason to not
Yeah.
have that on there.
You know, let me know what we're gonna be learning, you know, kind of stuff.
But this syllabus, like she said, though, this syllabus works if I'm at my undergrad. I went to Wabash College, 800 men in Crawfordsville, Indiana. This syllabus would be just fine.
Right.
You
know
we know where every
what you're
professor
supposed to
lives
do.
in the community. You know,
Right.
there's only 5 buildings on campus, small private liberal arts. this is a state university
Mhm.
with commuter.
Right, we have
Yeah.
many other distractions and, you know, maybe a college for a variety of reasons, different from the
Right.
gentleman at Wabash.
Right.
Okay, well, I don't want to eat into too much more time. I know Joanna has a number of things that she wants to get to. So unless there were any last comments that you were just dying to get out, I'm going to turn the floor over to her. And so Joanna, if you'd like to take us now through the wonderful world of Moodle and LIS resources.
So bear with me, my time got shorted a little bit, so I'm gonna try to do in 30 minutes what I thought I had 45 minutes to do, so.
Sorry, Joanna.
No, it's all right, it's good, I like discussion. So I kind of pick off where James ends in terms of what I'm really concerned with is the required texts area, maybe the calendar area, anything to do with bibliography, other resources, and resource material. So that's basically where I pick up. So he talked about the objectives, all the upfront things, and then I talk about actually resources. How do you input them into your syllabus? And that's really dependent on what format you choose to disseminate your syllabus in. Because are you doing electronic? Are you doing a simple Word document where there's no other way of dissemination, so all you give your students is a Word document, a PDF? That's a different way of handling it versus if you're using Moodle as a place to tell your students what to do, what resources to use. Are you doing a hybrid? Are you doing print? Are you doing electronic version of print? So are you emailing your PDF to your students so you could hyperlink things? So it's kind of like, so based on how you decide to disseminate your syllabus is basically what should guide you as to how you link resources. That's my first thing. So what I'm gonna do is basically start at the library site because I'm a librarian, so I can't help myself. So this is the library site. And what I did was I did create a guide for you all just so you kind of have a reference point, a checkpoint to go to. I do that for my students, so why wouldn't I do it for you guys, right? So to access the resource that I'm going to be using for this presentation, all you have to do is go to the library site, click on Research and Subject Guides, click on LibGuides, and we have a,
You know what? Open up a different,
I think I got it.
no, because it
Oh.
reads it automatically as an email. Open up a different browser. Go to,
This one.
yeah, try
Okay,
that.
just try this. So basically, I'm just gonna open this and just take you to the guide. So in case you don't know the URL, it's library.csu.edu. So research, subject guides. Okay, and there's a faculty section where it's all the different resources that librarians have created for you guys. The one that I created is called Syllabus Basics, and this is basically all the stuff that I want to talk about. So there's three main concepts I want to talk about, as I mentioned, and a lot of that has to do with, again, deciding how are you going to disseminate your resource. So you kind of have to understand library resources to know how to link them, how to introduce them in your syllabus. You have to understand how to search for these resources in the library, so hopefully all of you at this point know how to look for them, but I'm going to cover a little bit. And then the main thing, how to link them properly in your syllabus or the Moodle page. The reason I talk about proper linking is all of our resources are copyrighted. They're subscription resources. So obviously, the vendors don't give us free reign, so there's a specific URL you have to locate before you can link something. So a lot of what I'm going to talk about is actually finding the right link, and then understanding the formation of the link, and then actually using that link in Moodle in your syllabus. Okay, so understanding library resources. How many of you guys have ever tried to link to a journal, to a article, and you have gotten something that says, you have to log in, or, this URL has expired, or there's some kind of an issue? The reason that happens is all of our library resources are proxied. What that means is there's a server out there that actually kind of fools the database providers and stuff when you are off campus, and it goes to that server, and it asks you for login information, and that's the proxying of the URL. So basically, when you're off campus, the resource still thinks that basically you're on campus, but there's a specific way you have to enter it, right? So there's two facts. So the proxying of it, because of copyright, and the other thing is permanent or persistent links, okay? A lot of open access or free things that you find on Google, all you have to do is go to the address right here, you click it, you copy it, you paste it, and you're ready to go. That's not how our resources work. They're not that easy to link. This is why I'm going to talk about linking quite a bit. So Easy Proxy is what we use. It's a proxy server used by libraries like us to give access from outside to the library's computer network to restricted access website that authorizes users by IP address. So when you're on campus, you will never get a login, or you shouldn't get something asking for your login and username. The reason that happens is because me, as the electronic resources librarian, I go into these different database administrative ends, and I say, these are the IP addresses that are used on campus. When you're off campus, your computer has a different IP address. So when you're at home, at Starbucks, at a bookstore, which are there any bookstores left anymore? Any place you're using a computer and you're trying to link to library resources, you'll get a login and username. That's our proxy server, okay? So that's basically how that works. The other thing is persistent links. Again, we're so used to just going to the address bar and copying and pasting the URL, but in databases, that's not how it works. You wouldn't just go up here and copy and paste. What you need to do is look for something called a stable URL, a persistent URL, a permanent URL, an active URL. And there's always going to be some kind of a link that shows you these URLs. And I'm actually going to give you some examples. Okay, so those are some things to know, and this is why it's a little more difficult, but maybe it's worthwhile if you could give access to your students to the direct article. You don't have to just tell them, just go to the library site, which I'm actually really happy James showed you guys the syllabus, one of these syllabuses, because if you look at the American History Guide, it's very nice that she spent all this time on the content, but if you look at the October 26th through the 28th one, she lists all the links, but then when it comes to an actual library article, she says, available by JSTOR on the MIT Library's website. Okay, so she didn't provide a link, but I'm actually going to show you how you can provide the actual link to the library. So the students don't get this feeling like the library stuff is restricted. Why don't I just go to Google when I can just quickly find something, right? So that's basically what this bit is entitled to do. And like I said, I'm kind of rushing through it because I don't have that much time, but I just want you to be aware that all of this information is listed on this guide. Okay. So how do you search for resources? Most of you guys are probably aware that on our website, what you have is the gateway to journals, articles, so whole journals as well as articles, which are what, the different levels of resources. Databases, which are the largest, then you have specific journals, individual journals, magazines, newspapers, and then you have the actual article. So you have different levels of information. In addition to that, books, right, media, things of that nature are all, you can locate it all from the library's site. So as I'm going to go through a couple examples, you actually see what I'm talking about. So just bear that in mind. And you could actually link in Moodle, in your syllabus, to an actual journal. You don't have to just link to an article. Let's say you want your students to actually go to a specific journal. Like I want them to look at the Journal of Sociology, and I want them to pick any journal from any article from that journal. You could actually create a link to the journal, and then they can go and actually look up articles that they could in turn present to you or use for their research. Okay, so I already mentioned a little bit about dissemination. So including links to your reading assignments or recommended readings, which in your syllabus would be called, your required text or materials, your calendar, or any other resource stuff that you want to include. Okay, so based on what you want to do and how you want to disseminate it. If you want to disseminate something in print only, you're only going to give that them the print resource, you're only gonna give them a Word document, which is very rare nowadays. But if that happens, I would recommend you use the full URL, right? You don't wanna hyperlink a title because then they don't see the URL. So you actually need to display the full URL. So on things that are gonna be print, you wanna actually list the URL. Electronic by your email or PDF, so you can save obviously your Word document as a PDF, or you could email them an electronic version of your Word syllabus, right? Your Word document syllabus. In that, you could hyperlink, because they can just click as long as it's electronic. So again, you could hyperlink words, you don't necessarily have to spell out the whole URL, but there's a difference to how you're linking based on what method of dissemination you're using. And then the final thing really is Moodle, and that's where I'm going to actually show you how to do that. And some of you probably already have experience with that. You could upload a PDF of your syllabus or a Word document of your syllabus. It's electronic, so they could sometimes, click on things. But the best way, I think, and another way of doing it is to use the topic resource function within Moodle. And I actually created a sample one so you guys can actually look at what I'm talking about. Okay, so proxy links, okay? Why is it so important and why am I making kind of a big deal about it? Because like I said, it is not as simple as going to the address bar and copying and pasting the link that appears in the address bar. What you have to be aware of is that you're looking for a persistent link, something that's not temporary. A lot of the databases, if you copy just the link in the address bar, it will no longer work when you come back to it. So one of the best ways of explaining what the URL should be is by actually demonstrating it. So if you look at these are proxied permanent links. So how do you find it? How do you know whether or not something is a permanent link? I want you to remember one word, blue stem. Blue stem. You always, when you're off campus, this does not apply when you're on campus, but when you're off campus, you always want to look for blue stem. If blue stem does not appear anywhere in the URL, that means it is not a permanent link. You should not include it in your syllabus, okay? And I'll show you exactly how you're going to have to do this. So for example, it could appear either as a prefix, and this is the manual way of creating it. So when you're creating a URL for a specific resource, an article, journal, database, because you can link to a whole database, you don't have to keep telling them, go to the library site. You could link, like for example, you're teaching a criminology resource, and there's this really criminology class, and there's a really great database for criminology. You could actually link them to the full database. What you have to do is include the proxy prefix, which I added all over this guide. You can't escape it. It's bluestem.csu.edu, :2048, /login, $URL, the equal sign. So it's really long, that's why I'll have it, I don't expect anybody to remember it. It's all over the guide. So that's the prefix that you always have to put if you want students to be able to access the resources from off campus. Yes, they can, if you don't put the prefix on, you don't add it, then they can use it on campus. But as soon as they go home, as soon as you go home, you won't be able to access it, okay? So it kind of makes the link worthless off campus. The other bit is the permanent aspect, the stable, permanent, persistent URL. That's what actually points to the record, whether it's the article, the actual journal, the actual database, a video. We have a lot of video collections now. So all of that stuff you could link to your syllabus, no matter what method of dissemination you're using, but obviously electronic is better because you can actually embed some stuff into your syllabus. So you could just make it more dynamic. The other way you might be able to see, if you're off campus and you're looking at the URL on top after you link through everything, this is something that the computer automatically creates. So you will never have to do this, create a URL like this, but to know whether or not you're actually going through the proxy and you have the right URL, bluestem appears in the middle. Okay, so a computer automatically creates this. So again, the key is bluestem anywhere in the URL. That's how you know whether or not you're going to be having trouble with accessing it off campus. Okay. And again, I provide more information here if you want to go back and just kind of look at it. So I'm just going to open a syllabus, sample syllabus that I have for you guys. The joy of linking. Okay. So this is just a simple syllabus, and for my part, like I said, I won't really talk about any of this. It's more about the calendar and reading. So if you're doing this, right, you're disseminating this just as a print resource, you probably don't want to create you don't want to make the title necessarily a hyperlink. That doesn't help because they can't see the link. So what you probably want to do is actually include a URL. And if you notice, what I did was, and I'll show you how to get this information, what you'll notice here is that blue stem appears in the URL, and that's something you always want to check for. This was computer generated, but this one was one that I myself created. So I know I need a prefix, right? You won't necessarily remember what it is. So again, go to the guide, which again, I provide you the information. You copy the prefix, and then wherever you locate the permanent or persistent link to your resource, you combine the two. And that's how you create the right link for your resources, okay? And that's basically what it should look like. Again, if you are going to be disseminating this to your students, in electronic format, you could just link it so they don't see this crazy URL. You could just link it as a title, and they can open it, right? It doesn't work so well for the print. In addition to that, what I wanted to also show you is, yes, most of the stuff that we have that's going to be worthwhile connecting to is the electronic things, the electronic ebooks, the articles, the journals, the magazines, even the videos. But for some of you, for most of you, you use textbooks, right? So that's the main thing. Some of you choose to put things on reserve, some of you don't, and depending on what action you take, what you can also do for your students is you could put, if you decide to put something on reserve, you could list a call number and you could tell them how to retrieve it. So even that bit of information can help with a print resource. And then in addition to that, you could actually link them to the actual record. So they actually can see, again, if it's an electronic source, they can actually see the record. And in this case, this book needs to be requested from Mover, which, because you linked it to the record, they can do it right away from that link. So there's a lot of things you can do with the different types of resources that are provided in your actual syllabus, okay? And again, I did that for a bunch of articles. Because I'm assuming that this would only be in print format, I did not hyperlink the title, though obviously you can choose to do that just by right-clicking and putting a hyperlink there. And then you would just take the URL and you would create that as the address, right? And again, you just want to make sure it has the prefix, the right prefix, and then the persistent URL, which you would get from the database, from the journal. Okay, does anybody have questions at that point? So what I'm going to actually show you, and this is in the guide, so for any of you that you might need to kind of have a bit more practice with this, if you are in the guide, which I'm in the wrong browser, if you are in the guide, they'll give you specific instructions for different types of resources. The ones that I'm doing for ebooks, for example, it tells you specifically, you want to find an ebook, this is what you do. You go to the library site, you click on books and media, so it's step-by-step instructions. It also shows you, I hope you can see, where the persistent URL is, okay? This is what you copy and paste into your actual syllabus, your Moodle page, your, whatever you decide to use, okay? And then again, there's more than one way of obtaining ebooks. So you could go through the catalog, or you could go directly to the ebook databases that we have. So it's really finite, step-oriented, the guide is, so I think it would be more helpful than me kind of going through everything. And then we have eBerry. So how do you link to eBerry, to an eBerry book? And there's instructions for that, and so forth. So I kind of included everything I could think of. In terms of articles, I did the same thing. So I'm not going to go over the whole guide, but I just wanted to let you know that all types of things are available here. I'm going to use the APSCO databases to show you how to find the link you need, though, because that's probably going to be the most helpful out of all of them. Okay. So what I'm gonna do is, let's say you do have a specific thing in mind, right? You are preparing your syllabus, because I think this might be helpful. So you have a specific syllabus and you wanna see if the library has this resource. You have an article in mind. So we're really starting from really something specific. We're not just gonna go to a database and try to find any old article. So you have a specific article in mind. So in my case, it is, I'm gonna use one that's in my sample database, sample syllabus. So Sense and Nonsense About Surveys. It's for my psychology class. So what I know is the title of the article, but I also know what the journal is. So I'm looking for a specific journal. So article, journals, and databases. To look up specific journals, what you could do is either search it through the catalog, or you could go to this alphabetical list of, this is recognizing it as off campus? Anyone know that?
Yeah, just go.
Yeah. So basically what you'll find is this other list. So what you can do is type in the name of your actual journal. Okay, journals only. So I'm not searching a whole wide range of databases, of database articles. What I'm looking for is a specific article that I want to link to my syllabus. Okay, so it's called content. So what I'm going to do is look at my citation and see what year I need. It's 2002. So this list actually tells me, yes, we do have this resource. So what I'm going to do is click on the database that this appears in. Okay, and what I'm going to do is I can search this specific publication. Because I have a citation, I'm just going to click on Sense and Nonsense About Surveys, because I already have a title, and I'm going to click. Okay. And I misspelled it, so